Welcome, everybody, to Farming Matters, the storytelling series where you get to hear directly from farmers and ranchers who've had SARE grants. Today, we're joined by Elise and Jeff Koning. They're going to talk to us about Christmas trees and sheep, and specifically combining those things. They had a SARE Farmer Rancher grant, and SARE stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. It's a program that I work for. My name is Liz Brownlee. I'm your host. So does Marie Flanagan. Marie, do you want to say
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Farming Matters.
Marie's our producer and director. And mostly, though, we're going to be along with you, and we're going to listen to hear how these folks have utilized this USDA grant to push their farm forward and share out what they learned, because SARE's whole mission is to advance innovative solutions to the whole of American agriculture. So, Elise, Jeff, do you want to take it away?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Elise always wanted to have a sheep farm. Me, Christmas trees. When we started our farm several years ago, we knew we wanted to have both operations. But combining these enterprises was very difficult with our limited resources. We have limited land, limited labor, limited time, and limited finances. If we have more sheep, that would take away from pasture. It would take away from ground that we would use for trees. If we plant trees, we would reduce our sheep grazing land available. The weeds that are detrimental to Christmas tree growth are a potential food source for the sheep. It would seem that putting the sheep in with the trees is a natural, but traditional wisdom has always been that sheep destroy trees. But we came across a tidbit that Shropshire sheep are the single breed of sheep that can be used amongst Christmas trees and will not eat them. Yay! We happen to have Shropshire sheep. So we want to know, is this a realistic thing to do? Can this actually work? Is this feasible? Is this economical? But there's very little information out there about that. This is only a relatively recent discovery within the last, perhaps since the 90s. It's not commonly known, so there's no parameters that we could find for what we were intending to do.
So that's where our SARE project came in. We wanted to figure out what are these specifics for grazing sheep in Christmas trees. So last year, from April to September 2024, we measured how much time it took for activities related to sheep grazing. And then we looked at how much time it took for activities related to traditional weed control methods, which would be mulching at the beginning of the season, mowing 1 to 2 times a week, and then spraying for weeds several times throughout the season. And then we also wanted to compare the cost for materials for the sheep grazing to the cost for the materials needed for the traditional weed control methods. So we were looking at mostly labor and then cost. These are a couple examples of trees that are out in our control patch. So this is the patch with the traditional weed control methods. They both have mulch at their base. And then there was spraying and mowing in that patch as well. This is our test patch. We put up netting powered by a solar charger, so it had an electric charge through it. And we sectioned off the trees so that there was a paddock with 50 trees in it, and then we would rotationally graze the sheep through there. We also had a hay wagon that held an IBC container with water in it so that we didn't have to run hoses all the time. And you can see a sheep hiding underneath the hay wagon there. And it was a great source for shade, which was really important during the summer because we had some drought conditions and it was really hot. There in the foreground of the picture, you can see a couple trees. You can see the forage growing up around them. The sheep would eat that down whenever they get moved into the next paddock.
Yeah, this picture was very early season. You can see very lush, vigorous, intense growth. The trees are starting to become overtop there. There was very minimal learning curve for us in our control patch. We'd already been farming trees for several years by this point in time. We already knew the necessity and our schedule for mowing. We knew we had our workflow for applying the mulch. We knew the necessity and timing for our herbicide applications, for example.
But then we didn't know as many specifics for the sheep. And so we had a learning curve for testing out sheep grazing in Christmas trees. We needed to figure out how big the paddocks could be, what our stocking rate could be, how fast we needed to move the sheep through the trees. So with our stocking rate, how many animals we could have in a given area, we based it on the grass that we knew we would have available midsummer when the grass growth slowed down. So we based our stocking rate on that, not accounting for how fast the grass would grow in April. There was a lot of rain. We had a lot of fast spring growth. The grass got taller than the trees.
Yeah, that was an ongoing challenge early season to know when to move the sheep. If we kept the sheep in to clean up the patch they were in, the upcoming paddocks we were intending to use would those trees would become overtopped and very difficult to recover thereafter. If we moved the sheep faster, then we had the same problem in reverse that the trees behind in the past paddocks would become overwhelmed. This is a view of where the sheep have and haven't been. You can see the very stark line. The fence has been removed here, but you can see the trees are unaffected here. There's a better closer up view on the left. Indeed, the trees are unharmed. You can see over on the right that the weeds will quickly take that little tree over, but the sheep will and have cleaned that right up.
So looking at the time it took and the labor it took in order to have the sheep out in the Christmas trees, the activities that we were doing in the Christmas trees with the sheep were things that we were going to do anyway, moving them every 2 to 3 days, watering, checking their mineral. We would have done that no matter where they were on the farm because we're using rotational grazing on pasture elsewhere. So it didn't really matter where they were grazed, those activities were the same.
As far as our expenses on equipment, there is some difference. The sheep equipment, our primary expense was the temporary electric netting. We also required water wagon and some other things, but these are all one-time expenses. They should theoretically last indefinitely. The conventional methods, the mowing, mulching, herbicide, were initially much lower, but they're recurring and there's no recouping any of that. The sheep do represent a potential other revenue streams for us, wool, meat, 4-H lambs, for example, which you're not going to get with the other methods.
With our lessons learned, one of the ones that really stood out was that we're going to need more than one season to see those results. That's similar to how it is with a lot of sustainable ag or conservation ag practices. Uh, we need to take a long-term view in order to see the benefits of those new practices that we're implementing.
Having more sheep available will improve our results as well. It will increase our efficiency, add predictability, reduce our labor costs. We had a limited number of sheep, which were not able to keep up with the early spring growth. It was difficult to balance that. But having sheep available in reserve, we could put them in or take them out as the grass growth dictates. Um, we already have more sheep available for that so that we can go down to a much more predictable schedule. Our idea is every 2 days, sheep move, regardless of what else is happening. So we can schedule and live our life around that. We also know that the trees we used for our test batch were perhaps too small for this method. They are very quickly overtopped. It is very difficult to recover those trees. Those trees have lost that growth potential, which will take extra time to overcome. We will move the sheep in amongst larger trees and have already done so. We have started this year's study within the past week. Those trees are more resilient and more able to overcome and just more difficult to be overcome by the weeds should something get away from us. We would envision that perhaps trees that are only 1 or 2 years in the ground will always need the conventional methods because again they become quickly overtopped more so than other trees.
But even if we do use the traditional weed control methods for years 1 or 2, we still have 4 to 6 years that before the trees can come to market. And so we have those 4 to 6 years where we can realize some labor and cost savings with grazing the sheep out in the trees.
We want to thank SARE immensely for their assistance with this project. We couldn't have done it without them. We are more than happy to share anything and everything that we know. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. Our contact information is there. Uh, we'd love to be able to tell you all more about it.
Well done. That was so neat to see. Gosh, the sheep in with them. Fascinating, right? To just to have 1 year of data. Um, and you've got a whole nother year ahead, right? You're going to do a second year of the trial this year.
Yes. Yeah, we are nothing but optimistic about the results are really going to start showing what we're trying to demonstrate here, the labor, the cost savings, everything.
Neat. And you guys have had a lot of interest, right, from other, well, maybe other sheep people or other Christmas tree people. I don't know which or both.
Both, yes.
There's a Christmas, I always get the name confused. It's something like Christmas Tree Sheep Club on Facebook. And this is a practice that happens a lot over in Europe. Uh, Shropshire sheep will graze in Christmas trees, orchards, vineyards, um, because they're not going to bother the trees. And so there's a Facebook group where a lot of people ask questions as to how do you do this? And there have been several people who are interested in doing it in the United States. So people will reach out and say, is there anybody in the US who's doing this? Because I'm looking for help. So it's nice to be able to say, we have this project, we have some data, we can provide some information.
It's very surprising to me how this is not yet a widespread, a commonly known thing,
Hmm.
and some that hear sheep and Christmas trees just look at you with horror. You know, that'll never work. Not realizing the secret is Shropshire sheep.
Well, I mean, that's, I feel like a new piece of the conversation is reintegration of various crops and livestock, whether it's grazing cover crops or whether it's Christmas trees and sheep, or anywhere in between. So that's exciting. So you're already doing rotational grazing. So it kind of surprised me that you had the learning curve about the amount of growth in April. But was the learning curve really about having the trees as part of the sheep movement? Was about the study and the amount of data you needed to collect and things like that, or something else entirely?
It was about the trees.
Yeah.
I needed to figure out what am I going to prioritize? Because with rotational grazing, you want to leave as much as possible. With the Christmas trees, with these being small, the grass needed to be grazed shorter than I probably would have liked it. And so I
Hmm.
needed to decide which one am I prioritizing. And so I had to think the project is about weed control in the Christmas tree patch, and the sheep are helping out with that. So the priority is more the trees than the grass looking nice. So I had to think, okay, for the trees to thrive, where does the grass need to be? So
Hmm.
my ideal would be for the grass and the trees to be balanced so that the grass could be healthy and the trees could be healthy. And I think that's where grazing the taller trees comes in because it's easier to manage both. But with those smaller trees, it was hard to balance out.
I'm not friends with any Shropshire sheep. So can you tell me what they're like? Like, I don't know, temperament, like what is it like raising Shropshire sheep?
Shropshire sheep are pretty easygoing. They're good mothers. And we have not had trouble with them trying to get out of the patch. Um, they like to move along to the new patches whenever there's new grass. They get pretty excited about that. Um, but they have been pretty chill about being out in the Christmas trees and this new adventure. And I've seen them several times where I enter the patch and they get up from the hay wagon. They seem to know where the trees are because they kind of sidestep around them. So that's kind of neat to watch is that they have this feeling of, I need to watch out for these trees.
They know when they've got it good, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
they're easy keepers. I will add, prior to this study, we found out this little tidbit about the shrubs in late fall, and so we immediately set up some temporary fencing, and it was right during breeding season, and they don't eat the trees, no, but all their other activities, they're just not paying attention to the trees, and that didn't work well. So don't put the sheep in with the trees with the breeding season because they're they're focused on what they're focused on, and they don't care about your trees, and you will suffer some losses there. But it's not because they're eating the trees. So
Do you think there's any benefit to the trees from the animals being in there beyond the grazing in terms of like nutrient and what they're providing to the trees that don't have sheep grazing around them might not be receiving?
I think that's possible, and that could be a future study to see how well the trees do with the sheep fertilizer versus regular fertilizer.
my impression, and I can't back this up with any numbers, is having the sheep in there did mitigate mole and vole and gopher activity, which will do a number on a Christmas tree farm. They will decimate. They will target the roots of the Christmas trees. Um, and my impression is with the sheep in there, there was less activity from those varmints. I don't know, but maybe I it just seemed an impression, and I don't have anything more than that.
We talked earlier about integration, and this is something that is being looked at a lot in the conservation ag world, such as grazing cattle on cover crops. And there's also research being done into integrating livestock into specialty crops like vegetables. And so this is a good chance to keep that conversation going as to how we can use our land and labor efficiently. How can we cut down on some of our input costs? Farming is in a tough time right now, and perhaps integrations can help make our lives a little bit easier.
Well, I for one can't wait to see how year two turns out. Marie, can we do a part two in a year or so?
Yes, why not?
Oh, we'd love to be able to share. Absolutely, we'll look forward to that.